All right, and welcome to another episode of DB2. We are fresh off, I'm talking 3 minutes from the opening game. Uh, David Brem here with Daniel Butler. As always, Butler, how it was it having actual football again?
Oh, that was amazing. And what a game to start off, too. Obviously, you have the defending champs, as always, on Thursday night and going up against the Cowboys. Great to see Dak back, healthy, did not miss a beat. Looks like the best fantasy quarterback in the league.
Yeah, it
It's
was.
just insane. CD Lamb, Amari Cooper, that offense, I think is I mean, it's going to be amazing to be involved in that offense fantasy wise. And then obviously Tampa Bay, they win. Their offense isn't lacking either. So it was quite an offensive game and the game plan from Mike McCarthy, even though they end up losing, I thought it was a really well played, well executed, thought out game plan. Obviously, they weren't able to execute. Greg Zerloin, Greg the Leg, Legatron didn't have his best game, but it's questionable 60-yard field goal attempt. Like, what is that? I don't know what they were. I mean, he does have
Well,
a great leg, but they gave. I mean, that didn't end up backfiring. I think that could have went wrong. There was some questionable things in there, some bad penalties as well. But overall, really good game.
yeah, and a 60-yarder for him is not necessarily the worst idea, but I don't know how many times the announcers talked about how like he wasn't super confident coming into this game.
Yeah, and
So if you have a kicker who's not super confident, maybe don't throw him out there for a
and
60-yarder.
Wade Brady's moving, and you left a little. If it was right at the end of the clock, I think kick it. He has the leg. He almost. It wasn't that far off,
It wasn't
but
a bad kick.
and he has shown that he has made. I think he's been like recorded in practice hitting like a 70-yard field goal. I don't know
Yeah.
what the conditions were like, but he obviously has a great leg. Yeah, that was the only thing. That push off at the end, should that have been called?
I
I
mean, probably.
personally didn't think it was that bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't like atrociously
I
bad.
don't think it was
Um,
egregious, but it was one of those
it
where
should have
like
been
either way it
called.
was yeah. Either way it was called, I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
Like if they would have called it, I wouldn't have been in an uproar about it. Like
yeah.
it was just one of those.
But anyways, great
But
game. So I,
yeah.
I think we do want to talk a little bit about. I've kind of already talked about it a little bit, but there is some things that we really found out about both offenses
Yeah.
that is really interesting. One, you have to think about the game plan. So the Cowboys decided they can't run the ball on Tampa. They didn't even try. That front seven in Tampa Bay is so good. They didn't even try to
We
run.
we
So
also kind of saw this coming. We talked about
yeah,
this.
we knew that
Like
Zeke would not have a great game. Tony Pollard was involved a decent amount in the passing game, which we did expect, as he will be all throughout the year. But yeah, I think we said that Zeke, the value of him is going to be lower after this game. That's definitely going to be a fact that he wasn't going to have a big game most likely, and that ended up turning to be true. So again, if you are able to pick up Zeke. I have Tony Pollard in one of my leagues that I really care about, and I actually am going to be looking at that Zeke owner and being like, if I can pick up Zeke, I'm going to feel really good no matter what happens with this backfield situation.
yeah.
I'm going to feel really good because I have Pollard. I do think Pollard's a really nice back, and I do think that is a little dangerous. Like he might take some definitely some points away from Zeke, but I feel really good having the Zeke and Pollard, not even as a handcuff, just like it doesn't like I know going in, I'm sure I'll know which running back I would start. So even if
Yeah.
Pollard just has a great season and just starting to take some of those away, he might be the option. But I really do think Zeke is a nice option to pick up. His value should be lower. We'll see
Yeah,
if
and we're not talking like you're not going to get him 50 cents on the dollar, but you might be able to get him on 85, 90 cents on
yeah,
the dollar.
he was a first round pick, a late first round pick,
Yeah.
right? So maybe a second round, maybe an early third round pick, depending on, or if you package something, could be something there. So definitely found out that the Dallas Cowboys didn't want anything to do with Tampa Bay's front seven, but that is not
No.
surprising. But
Well, and one little thing to tack on to Zeke is and if you watch the game, the announcer said it 7,000 times. The Cowboys don't play another playoff team from last year until week 11.
yeah,
They were very, very adamant about that. So I'm not going to pretend like I investigated that. But I mean, if you can get Zeke 80 cents, 85, 90 cents on the dollar, and they're not playing another good team until week 11. I mean, we don't know. Some of those teams are,
yeah, there'll
I
probably be
haven't
a playoff
actually,
team in there
yeah.
from this
But,
year.
but you like that stat more than if they were just loaded down with playoff teams. So we talked about it last episode, so I'm not gonna like really harp on it. But yeah, see if you can try to try to swing Zeke away from the Zeke owner.
Yeah. So I think the Cowboys are really good. I know they lost. I think they're clearly the favorite in the division. Excited about this offense. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb look like both like top 15 receivers. They're
Yeah.
both going to have great years if Dak stays healthy. Third option, Michael Gallup. We talked before. Looked good early on. I know he got banged up a little bit, but still, I think he is in that late wider, maybe flex wider. He's somebody you're gonna own, but you're never gonna feel amazing about it.
Yeah.
He will have a couple big games, I think, because his offense is so explosive. So if you have to put, some weeks he'll probably be in your flex spot.
I was gonna say he's a great guy to have right now. Is once bye weeks hit, like bye weeks aren't for a little bit, but he's gonna be a great guy on your bench for bye weeks. He's never gonna be a guy where you throw in there you're that angry about it. Like you don't want to start him every week, but
he should give you some solid production. Even in this game, 4 catches, 36 yards isn't great. 7.6 points in PPR.
Well, and that's I mean, if you just watch that first quarter, he was on pace for.
Yeah, and I believe he was like wide receiver 29 before Dak got injured last year. So he definitely showed that he was in that low wide receiver 3. Now Dak was putting up lights out numbers, but he looks like he might
just did that as well.
Yeah. So tight end, kind of a crapshoot there. I do own Blake Jarwin in a league I care about. Looks like Dalton Schultz could be the option, as he had 6 targets to Blake Jarwin's only had 4.
Well, and when you're just slinging the ball all over the place all game, you're gonna have a lot of guys have a decent amount of targets.
It's really we're fighting for who's that third option. It's clearly Cooper and Lamb. They had 31 targets.
I think
combined.
It's still Gallup.
And then is it Gallup? He had the most targets, but he had 7. Schultz had 6. Pollard had 4. The running back obviously is always going to have some, but Blake Jarwin also had 4. Don't really love the tight end options here in Dallas. I think he probably, after this game, even though I love the offense, I'm going to definitely keep looking out for other tight ends. And then
Did that hurt you to say you didn't like a tight end?
I don't like these lower tight ends, that's for sure. Then we look at Tampa.
We're going to talk about the team that won after we just raved about the team who lost.
So, I think it makes sense. We got to talk about, so we got to go to tight ends. Rob Gronkowski, man, 8 for 90, fantastic. 2 touchdowns. That Rob Gronkowski type game from a few years ago, back Brady, Gronk in New England. Antonio Brown, man, only had 7 targets, so obviously that 147-yard touchdown pass, that helps.
I think unquestionably Godwin looked like.
Yeah, Godwin's the clear number 1, I think. Had 14 targets, almost twice as much as of everybody else. So if you want to know the hierarchy of Tampa Bay wide receivers, Godwin is clearly 1, I think. Then is it Evans still? Or is it Antonio Brown? Antonio Brown, Evans, both around the same targets. I love Mike Evans. He's had 1,000 yards every single year. He always has about 70 catches, 70 to, I think his high was like 95 with Jameis Winston, but always around that 70 catch, 1,000 yards. He had 11 touchdowns last year. I think he's still going to have a good year, but I think leaving that game, obviously you don't feel as good about Mike Evans, and you feel a lot better about Antonio Brown from where you drafted him.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is you feel better about Antonio Brown. I'm not worried about Mike Evans at all. He had a game that wasn't fantastic, but I'm not like, oh man, I got to try to unload Evans for a little bit, whatever I can get out of him. Like, he'll be fine. He had one bad game. You saw wide receivers get great production in this offense. You saw Tom Brady look like Tom Brady.
Makes no sense.
I'm not. We texted during the game. I'll never understand how he's still doing this, but
it's crazy.
I'm in no way, shape, or form worried about Mike Evans. I think I'm more confident that there's going to be 3 usable wide receivers in this offense, which we've talked about is very hard to upkeep, but if anybody can do it, it's going to be Tom Brady.
Yeah, and I think we do have to talk about running back, because this might be the biggest news of all, I think, because this is something we weren't really sure on. Remember, Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette were drafted almost in the same spots. Like, we were really not sure. We knew Giovanni Bernard would be a third down back at best. We didn't see him at all, really, until the very end.
Final drive.
So he shouldn't be owned in pretty much every league, except really deep leagues. So Leonard Fournette is, I think he's solidified as he's the guy you want to own. He had
Yeah,
the most
he's
carries. He had 5 catches as well in the passing game. So he had 14 total touches to Ronald Jones's 4. So no catches for Ronald Jones. So yeah, better option there is Leonard Fournette, and I think better days ahead for Leonard Fournette too. I mean, we'll see how how it goes. He didn't have any touchdowns. I think he will get some touchdowns, obviously. So I personally think this was really good news for Leonard Fournette owners. If you have him, I know he didn't have the best game. He probably only had about 10 points in PPR, but still, I think you should be pretty excited about the future for that. And if
yeah.
you're a Ronald Jones owner, I
Yeah,
think he's
stop
got to
it.
be on your bench. I obviously not
Yeah, you
dropping him,
can't
but
play.
you can't
Yeah,
play
you
him
don't drop him, but
next week. I don't think.
well, here's my thing. I'm just coming at this like looking at the numbers. It's not fantastic, but if you watch that game at the beginning, it seemed like Ronald Jones was in. Um, it seemed like he was on the field more, and I'm like, oh, okay, this might be the way it's going. But when they got in the red zone, it was Fournette. He didn't score, but when they were in the red zone, it was Fournette. He's obviously the pass catching option, and he ended up with the most carries anyways. So it almost seemed like they thought it might be Jones, and then Fournette just kind of took over. And um, I know it seemed like Fournette was blocking very well for Brady, and this is going to be a passing offense. So that doesn't help us points wise, but it helps keep Fournette on the field, which gives him the opportunity to catch balls, run, get more touches, and all that. So yeah,
Yeah,
Fournette I think is the clear guy.
yeah, and just to tie a bow on that, yeah, I think yeah, the fact that Brady obviously, he's got the control of this offense. So the fact
Yeah,
that Fournette's on the field and yeah, Giovanni Bernard is the best third down back, the best back. Like if you're in a 2 minute drill going down the field, which we've seen at the end, that doesn't happen
yeah,
very often. Usually you have the run
no.
pass option. You don't always want to, just be like, I'm going to be passing every play. On these third and longs, yeah, Gio will be on the field. But most of the time, you're not going to have the third and long, especially with Tom Brady as your quarterback. These 2nd and 5s, 3rd and 5 sort of situations, you're going to see Leonard Fournette on the field. So at least that's the way it looks like. We'll see if Ronald Jones, if that changes at all. But after week 1, I think we trust Leonard Fournette to continue, and I think Ronald Jones has got to be on the bench.
Yeah, and it's really nice to right away in a season in a situation like this to get clarity right away is rare. I feel like it usually takes a couple of weeks until we really clear out these battles, and I just feel like unless this was a fluke, but I really don't think it was. I think we really got like pure clarity on what is going to happen in the backfield for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and we'll see in the coming weeks. But for now, we kind of know what to expect. At least we know what we're going to be doing in week 2.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I think unless you have anything else, I think that's it for this game. We want to talk about a couple of guys because we want to give you something going forward. We don't just want to recap. What's done is done. A couple of guys maybe to keep your eyes out for that are a little bit undervalued in our opinion. Guys you don't hear a lot about, but could really make a difference. They're not going to be your number 1 wide receiver. They're probably not going to be your number 2 wide receiver, but they can definitely make a difference on your team. And my guy, and I drafted him in quite a few leagues, is Corey Davis. To me, where he was getting drafted and where he's kind of valued is insane for a number 1 wide receiver. And he's the clear-cut number 1 wide receiver. On a bad team, admittedly, with a suspect quarterback in Zach Wilson, I almost see that as a benefit because the Jets are going to be down a lot. And when you're down, you have to throw. And when you have to throw, you're going to throw to the best guy on the field. Like I said, he's not going to be your number 1 wide receiver. He's not probably your number 2 wide receiver, but if you're in a 3 wide receiver league or even a 3 wide receiver in a flex, like he's a guy I would have no problem throwing in a flex.
Yeah, and I was looking at Corey Davis, and I was thinking about just the Jets offense, and I'm like, I feel like the Jets offense is going to be good, but I do feel like I think there could be something there, and Corey Davis looks like the best. I mean, he is the highest
I
drafted
mean, he's
wide
clear
receiver.
cut. He's
But
like is Jameson Crowder going to be their number 1 wide receiver? I don't
and
think
then
so.
you have Elijah Moore. They did spend a 2nd-round pick on him, but yeah. So you look at this wide receiver core, and Corey Davis looks like the best option there. And he is. Let's not forget, 4 years ago. He's a number 1 draft pick, 5th round pick, or sorry, number 5 pick in the first round. So he's clearly coming out, very talented, and he showed some nice flashes in Tennessee. It's a little overshadowed by AJ Brown, but I think he's a very talented receiver. So you have a talented receiver, you have a quarterback that doesn't lack confidence. I'm confident that he is going to sling it. So they might lose by a lot, but all touchdowns, all yards, they count the same, right? So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I didn't say they're gonna be winning ball
Yeah,
games.
he's not going to be getting these walk-off game-winning touchdowns, or, oh yeah, he caught this pass that puts them in field goal range so they can kick the field goal to win. Yeah, you're not going to probably have those, but you might have a game where they're losing to Buffalo by 30, and he gets 50 yards in the fourth quarter because they're, playing, man up 3 deep, and they're just letting them just back off and be like, no, just keep, going down the field. And that could happen because I do think that Zach Wilson, though I don't think he's going to have a great rookie season, as I usually wouldn't predict on any rookie quarterback because it's really hard to be a good quarterback in the NFL. But I do think he is a very confident quarterback, and I think they're going to let him sling it. They're not expecting to compete this year. So why not Corey Davis?
Him to get those reps. And the other thing is, like, I'm a big proponent of rookies and guys who are down bad and just need to. They like to go to their number 1 wide receiver, their workhorse wide receiver, and their tight end. But that's not an option for Zach Wilson. I just pulled up because I thought I knew this, but I want to pull up the depth chart. Tyler Kroft is their number 1.
That was a Bengal before, right?
Yes, he was the 3rd string tight end on the Bengals.
Like when Eifert was there, right?
Well, I think with Eifert and I can't remember
Gresham?
who that guy was, but
Jermaine Gresham, is that who?
Gresham was there for a little bit, maybe at the same time. Maybe that was a little before, but I can just tell you right now, Tyler Kroft is not a threat to take catches from Corey Davis. Tyler Kroft is a great blocking tight. I don't want great is pushing it, but he's a very good blocking tight end. But I am not worried about him taking those touches.
I literally don't know a whole lot about Tyler Kroft. I'm not gonna lie. Outside of
we've been over this. When Andy Dalton was with the Bengals, I watched a lot of Bengals football.
And I can't say I watched the all 20, what is that, all 22 tape where you watch it from and see how great they are and look at their PFF grades, how great they are at blocking and watching their.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do all that research on Tyler Kroft.
Of the two of us, that's your job. That's not what you have to do.
But I will say, no one's drafting Tyler Kroft in any fantasy league. He's not even on the radar.
Not even Butler, who is obsessed with tight ends, was even thought about.
Yeah, Tyler Kroft was not on my radar, but watch him just blow up, and then we'll be, that'll be looking silly. But you look at the
I'm just saying, Corey Davis could be a guy who, if he has a bad week 1, let's say if he has a bad week 1 and 2 for some reason, I don't think he will, but he could get dropped. I could see people dropping him, and I think you'd be crazy not to snag him or try to trade for him really low. Because I know when I drafted him was crazy low in the draft. I'm pretty sure I drafted him after all 3 Bengals wide receivers.
Probably. Yeah, I think he's wide receiver 40 or so.
Yeah, so
ADP wise,
just a name to know. And a guy that maybe you're making a trade and you the other guy needs to throw something in to make it a little more fair. If Corey Davis is on his team, he might be somebody that guy doesn't think much about. That player doesn't think much about, and then you can get him thrown in, and then you got some pretty decent value.
Yeah, I'm looking at the ADPs right now. Using just Fantasy Pros for that, and he's right around wide receiver 41. I have, and then the next wide receiver is behind Jarvis Landry, Brandon Cook. I don't even want Brandon. Tyrod Taylor's at quarterback. He is a better quarterback right now probably than Zach Wilson, but fantasy wise, you can't. I'd rather have the Jets offense than the Texans, but maybe I'm wrong. But Corey Davis, wide receiver 41, Elijah Moore, they spent that 2nd round pick on. He's wide receiver 60. It'd be interesting to see how he develops into that role, if he is somebody that is on the radar at all. Just because, again, they spent a 2nd round pick on him, so they're probably going to want to try to at least get him involved, especially because this offense, they're just going to try to improve So he could be involved. And then Jamison Crowder down there at wide receiver 72, which I think we kind of
Yeah.
know what Jamison Crowder will be. I know he's banged up. I don't
Yeah.
know if he'll play in week 1, but I don't expect. I think he'll be fine. He'll probably put up like 600 yards, maybe. He'll be fine, but not
Yeah.
enough to really be fantasy relevant.
You're never gonna feel okay putting him in
Corey
your lineup.
Davis is somebody who could, legitimately. I mean, I think last year he almost had 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. So he's had a few good seasons over in Tennessee. So coming off a good season in Tennessee,
Just a
and
name you might not be thinking of that maybe just to keep in the back of your mind.
yeah, so that's interesting. And I actually, as I look more and more into it, I think I'm kind of on this Corey Davis train, or even this Jets offense. I know it's you're never going to be excited about it, but you're looking at things that you're trying to get good value for. All the
Yep.
popular players, all the top guys, there's not really value there. So I'm not saying to be excited about the Jets offense, but excited about it where they're being drafted or where people value them. I'm
Yeah.
excited about it.
Because right now your draft's over, but those guys, at least this early, are still kind of valued in that same mindset. That's
Yeah,
where
and if
people
you're
are
looking
thinking
at wide
about him.
receiver 41, yeah, which you probably won't see him dropped yet if he has a bad game, but it could be a couple
No.
games. But yeah, I mean that's not a huge investment. Players made. They won't even start him probably for a few weeks, and if they see him not doing anything, at wide receiver, he could definitely get dropped. If some
Yeah.
or if he gets
Well, and
banged
even if
up
he
at
doesn't,
all or anything,
well,
he
let's say in the first week he has a 2 point game for some, like he just has a 2 point game. Like Zach Wilson has the jitters, like nothing happens. He has 2 points. You could probably trade for him for almost nothing. Like one of your bench guys who maybe had a good week, but you don't think it's gonna stick. That could very easily happen.
Yeah, and I think this Jets offense again, like I think it, even though I don't think it's good, I think it could be fantasy. I think there could be a
Yeah,
little bit
I
of
don't think it's
fantasy
gonna be
relevant.
NFL good, but I
Yeah,
think it could. I could think it could definitely put us some fantasy points.
yeah. And then the guy that I want to. Anything else you want to talk about before I talk about the guy I want to talk about
Nope, I'm good.
with
I
you're
think
good with Corey
we've
Davis. All right,
exhausted our Jets talk.
all right. So let's go ahead and move to a team with. It's kind of wild to think like one of the best offensive lines in all of football, and their wide receiver and quarterback is not even fantasy relevant. No wide receiver, no quarterback, and by like if you look at no top 30 receivers, the
Yeah,
quarterback's
no
not even
no
getting
guy that
drafted,
you're penciling in every week.
which is crazy because when does that happen? A top maybe the best offensive line, top 3, top 4. They're one of the best offensive line. I'm talking about the Indianapolis Colts. And I want to talk about Michael Pittman. I know he's a popular. I don't want to say popular, but he's a little. He's people are saying he could be a sleeper
Yeah,
for having a decent year. And I personally, I think, where are you going to find this value with a great offensive line, a quarterback, former. Did he win MVP or was that year he got injured? I know I don't remember. But Carson Wentz had an MVP like season. Maybe it was MVP in
I don't think so.
Philadelphia. But he was besides last year, it wasn't like he was like that was it. Last year was not a great year, obviously, but Philadelphia had all kinds of problems. Offensive line, obviously. He's getting an offensive line here in Indianapolis. So one of the best. I think Carson Wentz could have a really solid year. Maybe not the best fantasy year, but I think he's gonna be able to stay in the pocket. And I think some receivers could have some fantasy value.
Yeah.
Michael Pittman had his best game as a pro in his last game in the playoff game against Buffalo. So I feel like this guy here, 40 catches, 500 yards last year, had a good playoff game as well. And you look at the rest of the receivers. You look at him, T.Y. Hilton. We don't
He's
know
out
at
at
least
least
3 weeks.
but
He's
like
got a neck
that's the kind
injury.
yeah, that's the kind of injury that like just you could he literally could just be done.
He may not ever come back.
Yeah.
He's had so many injuries, and as a Texans fan, I hate T.Y. Hilton, but I also love T.Y. Hilton because I see what he does. I'm like, as a talent, man, it just stinks that he's got so injured because
I love T.Y. Hilton because he has made me a
he
decent amount of money in fantasy in the past.
he is just. I mean, just play him against the Texans because he's good for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. But yeah, he's just destroyed our secondary every single time we played him. But the other receivers besides T.Y. Hilton, we have not we. I'm not putting myself in the Indianapolis Colts. Okay, I'm a Texas fan, but Zach Pascal, uh, fine wide receiver. I think I kind of put him in a, I don't want to kind of like the Jamison Crowder. I think he's gonna put up like solid 600 yards or what. Like he'll be a solid
I
receiver.
actually really like that comparison. I think there's a lot of crossover. Like we independently picked our players. We just actually like, hey, let's just pick a player we think maybe isn't being talked about enough. And I feel like we kind of ended up in the same kind of boat. Like these teams are just the team almost is undervalued, and
Yeah.
it's causing these guys to fall a little bit.
And then you Paris Campbell. Now I actually really like Paris Campbell out of Ohio State. He has been suffering a lot of injuries. He hasn't really seen the field much. He has only played 5 games, I think. He's played started 5 games in 2 years. So he's been banged up, but he can fly. He ran like a 4.3. And yeah, he just needs to stay healthy. I like him. I think he's I don't think fantasy relevant wise he's really too relevant there, but I think he could help that offense quite a bit. And I look at it and I'm like, okay, we got Paris Campbell, we have Zach Pascal. Michael Pittman just seems like the wide receiver that I think is going. Like I feel like one of these receivers will have a really solid year, like 1,000 yards. I think Pittman could do that. I think he could make a
Yeah.
big leap here, and I think the offense overall is going to be solid, assuming Carson Wentz is back and healthy, which I know he's. He's suffered a lot of injuries and recently, and somehow looks like he's playing week 1. I have no idea how he's back, but that looks to be he looks to be back. And I mean, I can't say this enough. I mean, where do you get this type of offensive line and you just have
Yeah.
no fantasy relevance? Like that doesn't make any sense.
No.
I mean,
Well, and here's the thing is opposing teams know the offensive line and they know everybody's pretty high on Jonathan Taylor and even to a lesser extent like Nadeem Hines, like that duo, and they expect the Colts to run the ball a lot, which they will. But that means you're going to be in a lot of defensive situations where they're stacking the box trying to stop those guys at running back, and that's going to open up opportunities. And Carson Wentz, while he's not like an elite quarterback by any means, he's a good enough quarterback to take advantage of those situations. And when he takes advantage of those situations, he has to throw the ball to somebody.
yeah, and just because I didn't have him right there when I was talking, Michael Pittman, wide receiver 43. So again, not overly too
Yeah.
valuable. Right there with Corey Davis, actually really close. Jalen Waddle, Mike Williams, okay, a few others, Will Fuller's in there. T.Y. Hilton down at wide receiver 73. I think that's a pretty. I can't. I
I
mean,
actually think that's high. Like
yeah, I
at
agree.
this point, if you ask me to pick, I don't think he's playing football.
Paris
I
Campbell at
just
wide
don't think he's
receiver
gonna play
81,
football.
I'd rather have, and that's who I said. I think Paris Campbell is kind of interesting. And then Kiki QT, I don't even know if he's on the active roster right now. And then Zach Pascal, wide receiver 128. Like I said, I don't think he really has too much fantasy relevance. He'll never probably start for you. So unless it's like a deeper league, very deep league. So yeah, I mean, I look at it. We'll see what T.Y. Hilton does, but for this, at least starting, and we don't expect T.Y. Hilton, even if he comes back, we don't really know.
I think what I read
Again,
was like best case scenario was like 3 or
yeah,
4
yeah, I think
weeks,
it was 3 weeks he could be off of the injured reserve.
and that seems overly optimistic.
Let me see. Carson Wentz is right now, so he's not being drafted. Obviously, he's
Yeah.
quarterback 28, which
Okay.
I mean, coming off of all these injuries, and he was really bad in 2020. So I think that's a big part of it. But that Philadelphia offensive line didn't do him any favors. So I think now going to Indianapolis, getting a great offensive line, he's proven. I don't know if you saw who won that MVP. When did he win MVP back a couple years
I
ago?
couldn't. I was trying to find it, and it didn't come up very easily, so I'm gonna go with
Okay,
no.
I'm
And
gonna.
I don't even remember that being a thing, so I
Okay,
could be very
well,
wrong.
so yeah, he didn't win the MVP. It looks like in that great season he did have, but he would have been MVP, I think, if he would have got it the year that the Eagles won the Super Bowl. So he's shown that he's MVP caliber. That might have been a shell of him. He might be a shell of himself now, but if they can get a competent quarterback play, I think this Indianapolis offense is kind of interesting.
Yeah, just in the conversation, he is 40-1 this year to win the MVP.
Seems kind
So
of
that
hot.
actually
Seems kind of
seems that that doesn't seem like great odds. But
yeah.
uh,
Why is that
that was
so?
kind of
Why is
shocking.
that so
I don't
high?
know. That seems
I see
that
that
seems like
too.
a really
40 to
bad bet.
1.
That seems like a really bad
I
bet.
thought it would be like
Um,
100 to 1 or something.
I think 100 to 1 is not a great bet, but I feel like if you want to get any money on it, like you should at
I
least
mean,
put a little bit there.
I think this
That is
offense
not
is
what we talk
interesting,
here,
but
but that was just kind of a surprising thing to
we could
to
talk. I
pop
love
up.
talking about gambling stuff, and 40 to 1 just doesn't seem that good.
Yeah, I'm going to take a hard pass on betting on Carson Wentz to win the NFL MVP. If he does, though, Michael Pittman's going to have a great fantasy season. See, bringing it all back.
Yeah. So if I'm how many MVP posts? So I'm just this was on ESPN. Wait, I think Brady won it that year, and and it looks like Carson Wentz did get some votes though for being MVP.
Yeah, he was closer to the MVP than I remember him being. So I'll give you that. I don't remember him even really being much.
Wait,
like
Todd Gurley also got votes that year. Man,
do you remember when Todd Gurley was the man though?
yeah, he's like the best running back in football, and oh my goodness, and in Georgia, like he went to Georgia, I think, right? And he was ridiculously good at Georgia, and then obviously injuries and running backs are running backs in the NFL, and that just doesn't keep up. So
yeah,
I saw something where it's like who the like top 3 running backs in 2018 were, and they're all 3 like irrelevant now, like almost fantasy wise. So it just tells you, dynasty leagues even like how quickly that just falls off. Whether it's because it's probably has a lot to do with also just money. Teams always looking. I think that's a good place to save some money at running back.
Well, and
the league changing how
they rightfully so don't want to give long-term contracts, like because it doesn't make any sense. So it's just so weird because I remember when I started, like for most years, like I think like maybe 6 years when I started, like LT was the clear-cut number one. Like you had longevity. And that you're just not going to have that. I don't think ever again. I don't think there'll ever be a running back for more than 3 years in a row is the clear cut number one.
You know, this is interesting because I think this is somewhat relevant if you're in dynasty leagues or what we're talking about at least. When we were in a league back, I don't know when that was. We were in a league several years ago. I had Arian Foster. No, you had Arian Foster.
It was.
I had.
Was it the one that I ran?
Yeah. I had
I think it was like 15 or 16.
I had Rob Gronkowski. You had Arian Foster. And we ended up trading. I don't know if it was a 1-for-1 or whatever. But we ended up trading. And Arian Foster ended up getting injured. He was amazing for me for like 2 weeks and then ended up getting like injured and then never was the same. But I don't know if he ever really came back from, at least he was injured for that whole year. But it's crazy to think about how much Rob Gronkowski has continued to produce since then. And Arian Foster, when's the last time we've heard that name? It just is crazy to think. Like Rob Gronkowski just had a crazy good fantasy game and then we have Arian Foster who hasn't been fantasy relevant. It just happens so fast for running backs. One day they're here and top of the world, and then next day they're gone. And it kind of stinks for running backs. I don't know why you'd want to be a running back. I mean, I know sometimes that's maybe where you're talented, but that first deal is like a 3-year with a 4th-year team option or however that works. And
I think depending on the round you're drafted, I think.
Yeah, so you have and if you're like a 1st-round pick, but if you're a running back, like that's like your prime. So like your next contract, you maybe get one solid contract, but like your prime is when you're on a rookie deal. It really stinks for running backs. I'm just putting that out there. They need to change that. I know they redid that all with making it so veterans got more money. It used to be rookies like Jamarcus Russell got like this ridiculous contract. Why are we even talking about this? But it is interesting.
Well, no, it's gonna get even more off the rails when you're done.
Okay, go ahead.
Just because you brought up Arian Foster.
Okay.
So if you are really missing Arian Foster, and you're probably gonna cut this, which is fine. He's doing like a conspiracy podcast on Barstool Sports now. It's actually super interesting. Like I listened to it. It's actually super interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
I know he's an atheist. I remember that part, but that's besides that, like off the field, I think he went to Tennessee in college. I remember
he did.
As a volunteer, but
no, it's actually a super interesting
undrafted free agent. I mean, I love those sorts of stories, but
and here's the thing: if we want to talk about like leagues who really abuse hey, we get control of you for a certain amount of years, the NFL doesn't hold a candle to baseball. Baseball, like, you don't even get to like have any say in what you make for like 6 years you've been in the league. It's insane.
I don't even know much about the contracts.
So you're like renewable for like the first 3 or 4 years, and then it's arbitration for 2 years or 3 years. It's like 6 years, I think, before you have any say in your contract.
I know that Mike Trout makes a lot of money, but
Yeah, because he plays for a team who's smart enough to make him happy. But like even he for a while wasn't. So
I was looking
none of
back
this is
on
making the show.
football. Back at football here. This part may, well, if we keep the Foster stuff, because I thought that was kind of interesting. Arian Foster, his last season as a like elite running back was 2014. He had 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, and that was probably the year he got injured because he only played 13 games. So I'm
Okay.
thinking
That
that
must
was
have been the year.
probably the year that we were in the fantasy league together. And then after that, he ran for about 200 yards in 2 more seasons, one with Houston, one with Miami. So that really was the end of Arian Foster.
Oh man, I
Uh,
forgot he played. Like I guess played his relative, but was in
yeah,
Miami.
it's like Ed Reed, in Houston. I always say Ed Reed
Yeah.
was a Texan great, but in reality,
I mean, you guys have to kind of grasp it whatever you can get. So
Amon Green, Texan great. Ed Reed, Texan great. That this is all fun. It's also at almost 1 a.m. So things maybe that's part of it as well.
our
Uh,
Thursday night recording shows might get a little wackier than the other ones apparently.
I mean, we're only at 38 minutes, so I honestly probably could keep all of this. Is there anything? I might not keep the baseball stuff, but we'll
No,
see.
that's fine. I just that's so like as a diehard fan, it still bugs me that the teams have that much control over the players. It
Maybe I will
drives
keep
me
all of
insane.
this because it's all important information that people need to know, and we need to fight the system. All right, so we got to put it out there. Got to put our voice out there so people know this is not okay. Gotta fight the system, even though I have no idea how the baseball system works. What are you looking up anything there that is relevant before we?
I'm just looking at the schedule for this week to see if there's anything that's like glaring, like somebody's got a crazy good matchup, but
I
like
know
it's
Jacksonville
hard to know.
faces Houston, so that's
I know that I know that because I drafted Jacksonville's defense in a league where I'm just going to stream defense.
I did the same thing, and I in one league, and I think it was Carolina. Yeah, because they play the Jets. They're at home, so I did the same thing. I'm like, I'm just gonna wait and just pick. I'm gonna look at the matchups, and I took Carolina. So
I'm in two leagues where I have to pay for transactions, so I don't do that in those leagues. But in like a normal league where you don't have to do that, I'm just streaming defenses. I'm just seeing a couple of good games to like keep your eye on. Like I can't believe I'm saying this, but Chiefs Browns, like there's actually quite a few fantasy implications in that game. Like that'll be a good one. Um, now we can kind of see what the Saints are made of. I think it's just going to be the Alvin Kamara show, but
yeah, and I think just to wrap up, I think even though you may watch this after these games happen, I think one thing I always try to look at when I'm looking at these games, it you really like the box, like what the actual fantasy points. A lot of people will obviously look at that, but in that at the end of the day, like that's the number you care about for that week. But it's different. Like having 12 targets and not having as good a fantasy production compared to somebody who had 4 targets who end up getting a couple touchdowns. You probably are rather having the 12 target person just in general. So just always looking out for these guys that are getting high volume, whether even if they're not necessarily catching the ball, just somebody that's highly involved in the offense. If they have big fantasy days, but they're never on the field because they just happen to catch the 3 passes and they were big plays when they were on the field, maybe they'll get more playing time because of that. But always look at that when you look at these games. Look at the guys that are on the field and getting those like high snap percentages. Because if you're on the field, you can't score points if you're not on the field. So
yeah,
I always like to look. I always think playing time is huge. It's not the only factor because it doesn't mean you're going to put up points. You might not be involved in the offense even if you're on the field, but you're more likely to be involved in the offense. So
well, and it can just like we saw tonight. Like if you just look at that box score, you could easily pick out that hey, this running back battle that we were wondering about, you got a clear answer. Even if if you watch the game, it was very clear. But if you look at the box score, it was just as clear. And like you said, that just on attempts, purely on attempts.
yeah, so that's something you could even they always put those like you could look up like snap percentage and stuff. Those are things that I always like to look at when looking at my pick, like if picking up players and stuff. Like, whoa, that guy was on the field way more than I was expecting. With tight ends, I'll be interested to see what the breakdown was with Blake Jarwin and Schultz because I don't know who. I mean, I was trying to see. I felt like Jarwin was out there pretty much anytime there was a tight end out there, but I mean, Schultz maybe too. I don't know. I'll have to look at those numbers after the fact. So whenever I see them. So those are
Also,
all
another
those
thing,
things.
if you're watching pretty quickly after we throw this up, keep an eye on what happens in Baltimore and who they sign. We talked about Gus Edwards quite a bit in old episodes. I was pretty high on him, and obviously he's done. So there's a lot of rumors flying around with people they're going to sign and guys that are already on their team. So just kind of keep an eye on that. See if maybe you can snag if a solution does come and people aren't hoarding everybody who's being talked about. You might be able to snag a guy who actually has some pretty good playing time.
Yeah, the Baltimore offense is something of rushing wise. I think for a running back is going to be highly valuable.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know if it matters who is on the field. Whoever is on the field, that person obviously the better running back. I'd rather have J.K. Dobbins than anybody else they're going to sign or whoever's going to be out there. But the fact that you don't have J.K. Dobbins, obviously you don't have Gus Edwards, whoever's on that field the most is going to be valuable. That system that they run, Lamar Jackson is highly fantasy relevant when it comes to how important is he to the running back. So the offense they run is just super good for that running back. So look for that. Whoever is seeing the most snaps, again, whoever's on the field.
There's a
the
lot
most.
of stuff. Like we could go over all of it, but there's just so much floating around. Nobody knows.
Yeah,
What's
so
exactly going to
always
happen.
when those types of offenses, especially now with Baltimore, I know a lot of people have said like you don't need you really shouldn't have Le'Veon. And I get that early on before Gus Edwards went down. I get like a lot of these guys are like it's not worth it, but this is one of the best offenses to be a running back in. So if you get the running back that's in there the most, that's going to be a running back that is going to be playing. Like he'll be on your team, I think, in a starting position. So
Especially if you're maybe somebody who drafted Gus Edwards in 50% of your leagues and lost a player before a game was even played for the entire season.
Yeah, it's a rough
Not that I
time
know.
for
Not that I know
Baltimore.
anybody like that.
Yeah, that's tough
And
for Baltimore fans and obviously for fantasy owners, but even more so obviously for Gus Edwards and just their.
well, yeah, he had a chance to really take over. Like he was the guy, and you do feel bad for him. That I don't know what's going on up there because they had 2 ACLs today.
Yeah,
So
it really is unfortunate, but something to keep an eye on. Always looking at trade targets. Always looking at maybe some free agent options, especially in a situation like that that's unclear. You might be able to snag somebody off waivers that it ends up being a top 15, top 20 running back, and maybe even better than that. And he's not even owned at all right now because we just don't
and
know.
that can make a huge difference in your season.
We don't know. Look for those free agent signings once if you see something. If Baltimore signs somebody that's you're like I know that name, it's probably somebody you should pick up. I think, but if you have the roster spot. But I think is that all we want to talk about? We talked about Michael Pittman. I like him. We talked about Corey Davis. You like him. I actually like him too.
I love him.
And we obviously recapped the game. And yeah, we'll be doing this. To always be going live. Not I shouldn't say always because I just in case there's any issues. But Tuesdays and Fridays are always the target. So like the video, subscribe, all that jazz. If you enjoyed.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you watching. And I think we're gonna both probably head to bed now because it is we're old men now. So this is pushing it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a good one. See ya.
See ya.